What's up, everybody, and welcome. My name is Ketchup, and I'm joined by ZSX today, and this is week number 8 of Stage 4 of the Quake Pro League. I think this has been... It feels like it's been one of our faster stages. I honestly don't really know where the time has gone. Here we are anyway. We have a bunch of crazy games lined up, and especially number 1. I mean, I think we've got a good week today.
I think this is one of the best weeks we've seen, and it feels like an eternity since I've been sitting here chatting to you, Ryan.
It's been a while.
It's been a while, and so much has happened, but we're back for some good matches.
100%. And in a couple minutes' time, we've got the schedule to show everybody so we know what the action's going to be and the day's action. We are starting with one hell of a matchup, actually, Toxic versus Base. That always seems to be an interesting one. I know it's a matchup that a lot of people often always look forward to, but I mean, the reality is it's week 8. You know, we are reaching the later stages of this now. The points are going to start to really matter. You know, we're starting to find out who's in the lower end and who's, you know, looking the most dominant this time round. As you can see here, Tox versus Base, match number 1. Cygib versus Dahang after that. Sparty and CNZ, which is going to be quite an interesting one, actually. Nosfer versus Chain to kind of end the first half, I suppose. And then moving on into our next side of things, Avec and Cooler, definitely a matchup that people are going to be looking forward to. Kilson versus Cypher, another one. And then finally, Rafa versus Dramis to finish the show this week.
Some really spicy matchups there. Obviously, Kilson versus Cypher is going to be my favourite for the day, but Avec versus Cooler is a really interesting one. We're seeing Cooler dropping down the leaderboards, now lying at 8th, and Avec has, in the past, done very, very well against the Russians. So, 2 really big matchups back-to-back later today, but we're starting with an even bigger one, which is Tox versus Base. Again, a complete contrast in styles, and I think people look at Tox and always expect him to pull something out, but I just can't see it against Base today.
I mean, people always use that term, clash of styles, often in a game like Quake, and I think that this matchup is one of the most like extreme examples of that, because you just have 2 players that, I mean, Base, you know, it's often said that he is highly defensive, but he can be aggressive when need be. He's just fundamentally ridiculously good at this point. And then Tox, who's just, you know, the execution master, but can obviously, you know, we've said it time after time, can be a little bit inconsistent. And against someone like Base is not really the kind of player to be intimidated by that kind of style. You know, he is incredibly patient, and we've seen that work out a lot to the point where, you know, we're just looking at the leaderboards and Base is doing just fine for himself and continuing to do so. But I mean, you know, if we're talking about player versus player here, I definitely think that it's fair to say Base has a bit of the advantage. I think more people would probably favor Base in this matchup, but Tox entirely depends on how he plays today.
And that's the point. I think you said 2 really key points there for me, that more often than not, people put Base into this pigeonhole of being ultra defensive and offering nothing really else, but he's incredibly gifted across the board, and mechanically, when he's just so adept at crafting situations that are in his favor, and you can see he pulling out shots that most other players can't match as well. But then you have Tox, where if he turns up, then who can touch him? That's the thing, right? That he is just an absolute powerhouse when he's on his game. It's just one of those facts that we don't see it enough for anyone's liking, because we all want to see Tox back in the finals, back for challenging for championships, not down in the mid-table of the QPL. So he's still got a lot to prove for me. He's been around for what seems like decades in the scene and hasn't lived up to previous iterations of the Toxinator. I want to see him back.
It's one of those things too where we sometimes see shades of that. It's just very much on a map by map basis, isn't it? I've said this so many times, but sometimes like it can be quite stressful being a Tox fan, because those highs are extreme highs, but then the lows are devastating. They're heartbreaking because they will have a map that will just be complete full control, dominant, looking good, and then in like the final 30 seconds some disaster happens and then the whole map just slips through his fingers. And it's like that's happened many times in I mean, since the Quake Pro League began, really. And but when it goes well, I mean, it's spectacular. But you just love to see that element of consistency kind of get a little bit higher, I suppose. I know that the picks and bans actually are quite interesting this week, particularly keeping an eye on the first match today. where it's going to be Blood Run with a Scale Bearer versus a Nyx. Definitely not a matchup that you see every day. Tox going in with that Scale Bearer kind of makes me feel a little bit, I guess, like 3-year nostalgic, I suppose. I know Tox really liked the Scale Bearer a long time ago.
Yeah, Blood Run's a good map to pick Scale Bearer on as well, because you can use it positionally and make sure you don't take too much damage, even though you're quite a heavy champion. But on the flip side, Blood Run is obviously Base's home ground, and playing Nyx on that map, as hard as it is to go up against a heavy champion quite a lot of the time, again, Blood Run is the map to do it on. And so it's going to be a very hard task, I think, for Tox to nail down Base. But if he can get the momentum up, I don't see any reason why he can't keep that pressure going to potentially push away the map victory. Moving on to Awoken, we have the best Slash in the world in Tox. It's amazing to watch him play. Awoken's not the best map for Slash, but using Slash on any map is always going to be a bonus for Tox. And Vise is a little bit vulnerable for me. Obviously, the piercing sight is useful, but there's not an awful lot of hourglasses to pick up along the way. And it's not the best map for a Visor. Nevertheless, we'll see what Base can do. And then we end up with Ruins, Anarchy versus BJ. Pretty much the staple map for Anarchy. And with BJ, you have always the fallback of the dual wield, and Base uses that very, very well.
But as you can see, just on the picks alone, you've got a lot more just, I guess, like normal, quote unquote, just kind of playing a solid game of Quake and then having utility that can help that on the side of Base. And then Tox, it's just all mobility, and it's what he's known for at this point. You know, he has been for so long that execution isn't really a problem for Tox. He uses that speed to his advantage, and when he is playing that game and when he is on form, having that crazy mobility factor above you can often be that thing that can result in, you know, snowball victories for him. But those smaller stacks, sometimes when he's the one on the back foot, that's when it can be quite difficult. So it's very all in sometimes, the way Tox can play.
Yeah, and that's reflected, as you say, by the choice of champions. The mobility-based, often lighter champions. And that's the great thing about Quake champions, is the characteristics really shine through in the picks and bans, whereas Base, much more positional, much more astute in the way he plays about the map, and that's reflected again in the slightly slower-paced champions that he picks.
But I mean, as we now wait, just thanks for being patient with us. A couple minutes, we should be in the first map and up and running. But, you know, if we're talking about predictions, I know we've kind of loosely touched that we think Base has the advantage here. But I mean, if we're thinking of like leaderboard positions alone, you know, Tox and Base, they're both in good positions. I know you'd loosely mentioned earlier that it's one of those things where it's a shame to see Tox kind of fighting for that mid-level. You know, you want to see him rise again, and Base looking a lot better recently. But at the very least, I guess they're not two players that are having to worry about the extreme low side. Tox has definitely been, I think, near the lower end a bit more consistently, but this is definitely, if Tox can secure even a 3-0 here, that's a great injection of points for him.
No, absolutely. I think watching Tox, for me, what's the analogy I want to use here? It's kind of like watching a supercar on a gravel road, you know, where he's got all the horsepower in the world. He just can't get the traction to pull off what he wants to do quite a lot of the time. And we talk about it week in, week out. It's stability is key for Tox. When he finds his groove, he likes to keep up the pressure and the tempo and hit these flashy shots. And that's all well and good, but Quake isn't all about a frag movie. It's about control and tempo and knowing when to use that capability. And it just doesn't feel that Tox has rounded that side of his game, even though he is still a champion in Quake Champions just yet, to understand how to really maximize the power that he has. So he needs to kind of change his wheels and get back onto a flat track road and just find some stability in his game. And I remember way back in Quake Live days when he came back to the scene, some of the best Quake we saw from him is when he was playing a slightly slower pace, more strategical game with the capability then to turn up tempo when he needs it. So it's just finding the balance, I think, and that's something that Base has in abundance. It's knowing how to play strategically and slow the pace down. He doesn't always overextend himself when he might need to, but he prefers the safer route option and has the mechanical skills to really reinforce that. And that's why we see Base actually coming out with some big victories. It isn't a Dewey level, like, 1-0, 2-1s here and there. He has had some big victories along the way. So that's why I'm edging out Base in my mind.
And there's consistency too. How many times have we seen Base have an off day or a bad map even? He's a very consistent player, I find, and it does come down to just how fundamentally strong he has become. For the past couple of years, even in Quake Champions, Base has been a player that has just really slowly but surely just climbed. He was very, very strong online. I know some people doubted him during the early stages. He wasn't really able to bring it to LAN for some time in the early stages of Quake Champions. And then, again, I think it was DreamHack Tour, that 2v2 tournament where he just had an insanely strong performance. And from that point on, he just looked good. He was able to kind of match that skill he had online and was finally able to apply it to that kind of LAN setting. And from that point, Base has just been, it almost feels like he has just ascended since then, to the point where now he's definitely one of the best players in the world. He's always been in a really decent spot in the Quake Pro League leaderboards, that's for sure. And he's always the kind of player that people will worry about, if they see him in bracket, because you know what you're in for. You're in for a difficult match, and you're in for someone who can just play this game extremely well.
Yeah, does it feel to you that something is missing from him to take him from being that, I really don't want to play Base, to, oh my god, Base is going to smash me and take the championship? Because I don't think anyone just yet has had that real feeling that he has it in his locker to win on the biggest stage. Like, I would always expect Base to get to a semi-finals based on his caliber and performances, but there's just a gap there between him and the Raffers and Cyphers of this world. And that's not to say that Base can't beat those players, but I just think on a consistent level, there's something he needs to improve. And it is, again, for me, it's advancing his game away from just being purely strategical and methodical to really ramping up the pressure. That's something that Rafa does better than anyone else, is when he has control, you are suffocated off the map. And I think that sometimes Base can take his foot a little bit off the pedal and let his opponents back into games when they might not otherwise have the right to be in that game. Nevertheless, as I said, I think on current form, Base for me is really up there as one of the top 3 or 4 best players in the world. And will push everyone to a close game.
Yeah, I mean, even look at some of his stage finals results that have just been incredible too. It's something that he can certainly be proud of, I'm sure. But, any player that's in Pro League at this stage, especially this side of things, they're here because they are absolutely, within capabilities of going really far. And they know that. So it's the great thing about Pro League is that I think almost no player here is going to be satisfied with second or third. Everyone's gunning for number 1, and everyone is super hungry for that. And that's definitely reflected in just how talented everyone has become. We're in stage 4 now. It's crazy to think that we're now in like the final stages of things. I feel like I've kind of blinked and missed the entire thing. I don't know if I'm alone in that one, but I just want to quickly give everyone an update. Thank you very much for being patient. We have got the lobby up and running now, and we have started our first map. So it's going to be Blood Run Nyx versus Scalebearer. Had a couple of issues getting up, but now we are good to go. And thanks for staying with us. We're loading in, and we should be good to start map 1 very soon.
I'm going to go for 2-1 Base today. Just putting it out there.
Oh yeah, we touched on predictions a little bit, didn't we?
Yeah.
I feel like
you get around to it.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it could totally be a 3-0 for Base. It's just we've said it time and time again. It really depends on what Tox is looking like today. It's hard to make a Tox prediction in this kind of matchup until you see what form he's on. You need to cheat a little bit and get that extra information.
Yeah.
Normally,
it's one of those things where I don't ever feel that you can count Tox out of a map just because of how gifted he is as a player.
Yeah,
but you're completely right that there is no reason why this couldn't be a 3-0 Base. I don't think I would expect a 3-0 Tox, unfortunately to say it. But I'm going to stick with the 2-1 to Base.
I think I'd agree with the 2-1 Base. As much of a biased Tox fan that I am, I think that, if we're going by just previous results and how Base is looking right now, and again, through consistency alone, I feel like Base has the advantage here, but not to count out Tox by any means. We're now loading into Blood Run. Things are going to kickstart. Looks like we're checking out Base's point of view first, and we'll see how things start off. Looking like Tox able to use that extra mobility to get in and out unscathed for now. Not a bad start for a mega giant champion like Scalebearer.
Yeah, and this is the challenge that Base is going to face all through this map, is making sure that he can just keep doing chip damage to Tox, as the first engagement, he does hit the opening rocket, and Tox is incredibly low. Base's rockets were incredible. Yeah, it's just making sure he's on top of Tox at all times. Even if he can't commit to major items, it's making sure he's dealing that damage from range, ensuring that Tox doesn't hit that effective critical mass where he can then just steamroll his opponent. But on the flip side, Tox has a challenge because, as we well know, you have to kill Nyx twice if she has that Ghost Walk to run away. Tox has guessed right, but might die for guessing that.
Going in for a rail shot too, I mean, that's big risk, big reward right there. And you can see even at the start of the map, Base, even though he didn't secure that frag almost immediately, he still got that victory because he'd done enough damage that Tox couldn't really fight for either of the items, and it allowed Base to really steal them away. Licking his wounds a little bit so far, but patient game. Yeah, that's a careful play. Don't want to push too far ahead right as Tox uses the teleporter, otherwise you're done. But now Base having to play very, very patiently. Fortunately, though, his Ghost Walker's come back, so he has got that.
Yeah, and that's the game you have to play when the Ghost Walker's not Base, knowing both items are up, but forfeiting them just to maintain a strong defensive position, buy some time to get the Ghost Walk back. You don't want to overextend yourself in those types of situations because you are so vulnerable. Like I said, this is the way Base is going to play pretty much from here on in, is play the corner routes, try and damage your opponent on item pickups, which he does so well. Jumping over the bull rush, and Tox is in a little bit of trouble here.
And again,
look how
Base,
much damage he's done.
Exactly. It's about dealing enough damage that you can safely go in and then use that as an opportunity to steal any important resource away. Or at the very least, put Tox behind so he's not able to kind of command around the map. Ghost Walk is ready for Base, but with no armor, has to be very, very careful.
You can see that even though Base has now done that damage, his single rail has set Base back into this defensive position where he needs to slow the pace down ever so slightly.
Good shot.
And as he does that, Tox is able to just scoop himself away, pick up a light, get himself into a decent fighting position. Oh, that was close.
Yeah, definitely had the right angle down there. Didn't quite hit the mark, but the important thing is that Base currently sitting on more stack than Tox, and with that Ghost Walk ready to go, should there be some kind of fight that breaks out, I don't think Base is going to be too timid at this point. And Tox, his bull rushes haven't been amazingly accurate so far. I know on those smaller champions, especially with access to a wall jump, it can probably be a little bit tricky to land sometimes, but it's the danger of a bull rush. It can be massive reward if it lands, but if it misses, I mean, yeah, you have damage reduction, but if it misses, you're point blank. And if you've taken more damage than you've been able to deal, that's it. Using it to escape. Good call. Tox doesn't want to fight there. But now you can see Base, center of the map. He has all the information and all the positioning to really just let Tox go around these corners and get that range damage that you talked about at the start of the map. Make it really hard for Tox to really challenge. That's a really nice rail. Looking for a second. Right as the Mega spawn, so Base isn't going to be too worried about taking rails at this point. Swap into the machine gun for a little bit more consistent damage, and he's been able to bait him through. Misses a pretty surprise rail at that point.
We could also see how methodical Base is. There is a couple of openings he's forged where he could have pushed, but knowing that pushing would have potentially cost him more damage, then it would have been worse. Great use of the Ghost Walk there just to resist any potential damage. You can see that Base is waiting to forge a perfect opportunity. He's not about rushing. It's about taking it a step at a time, doing enough damage and taking the right fight to get the frag, not just getting a frag for the sake of getting one. Because if you take a frag, lose all your health and armor, your opponent, who is a big, burly man, spawns with a huge stack and can rush you down. So Base realizes he needs to play a slow tempo, and that takes a lot of restraint. Because you know there's a frag there for you, but if it's not the right frag, you have to really bide your time. It's discipline.
That's the magic word. It's often Base is always described as being one of the most disciplined players that we have in the world right now. And this kind of matchup is exactly why. And even down to things like, he's playing the matchup correctly or intelligently, where this Ghost Walk has almost exclusively been used on reaction when Tox is up close and uses a bull rush. If Base has this peace of mind to think, right, this bull rush could totally result in a frag if he hits it, he just pops that Ghost Walk to disengage and just completely neutralize it. And then by that
Base
point,
is effectively kiting his opponent. Tox having to pop the bull rush to even close the gap there.
Uh-oh. Has to risk taking another rail just because he wasn't quite on that Mega as it spawned. And that has allowed Tox to go for a complete trade-off. Not terrible damage on these defensive rockets, enough to definitely make Tox a little bit nervous.
He's been able to pick damage from rockets there, 110, but you can see how healthy Tox even is after those two Precise rockets. So base, this is why he's just trying to whittle away again.
Oh,
Tox is very early for this Mega though.
really good play there from base, actually using the aggressive Ghost Walk to push in, catch Tox, who, as you quite rightly said, was too early on that item. Had the super shotgun ready.
Example of the issues we're talking about with Tox. He's played very well, in all honesty, despite being down for the past 4 minutes.
Oh, that
base goes
rocket
up a little bit late, and then he just a mistiming, a mispositioning, and that shows that, again, the caliber of base and the level that QPL is. That slight mistiming cost Tox another frag. Now the first opportunity base had, he takes it.
Base a second time using somewhat of an aggressive Ghost Walk to push in there. Tox had to very much concede that, and some absolutely fantastic LG from base. He's going to take that third frag.
Massively out-aimed Tox there. Yes, he's a small champion versus a heavy, but that was surprising.
Base has essentially played this entire map with this objective of don't give Tox an opportunity. And even now, the escape. Using a rocket jump, base is going to go in. Oh, the jump around the corner. Oh, that's going to completely miss the bull rush. Tox going all in, and base still finding a way.
We need to change base's tag to base the Matador. It's the second time he's done that to Tox. Tox might be able to get a frag here, but the Ghost Walk comes off cooldown and he doubles back. Will Tox guess right? Yes, he does. It is 3-1, and we've seen it's taken, 4-1, sorry, and it's taken 7 minutes for Tox to do that, despite heavy pressure.
The way base has played this entire matchup has been so frustrating for Tox. Anything that looks like an opportunity, he's tried to steal it away. He is quite tender now, though. Tox looking real good, if you compare the stacks here. But the question is, can he find him? Can he actually make chase? That's been the difficult problem, for 7.5 minutes. Base is playing this crazy good defensive game, but taking damage when possible.
Well, in spite of talking about base playing the defensive game, and it has felt that Tox is on the ascendancy. Base has a significant amount more major items than Tox across the map so far.
Oh, the knock-up! Oh. Sending base into orbit right there.
Base has done over 1,000 more damage than Tox in this matchup. I mean, more damage would be expected given the heavy versus light, but that is still quite a significant margin. There is still 2 minutes left, and Tox is clawing his way back into it.
Now the danger is from this point is that Tox, he's sitting on a wonderful amount of stack. Wait a minute, it's going to go right into base. Base, quite rightly having LG out there, able to push him down through the jump pad, so it's not going to be quite a free pickup. But now 1.5 minutes to get 2 frags on base, who has a Ghost Walk and has been quite hard to really pin down here. This is going to be difficult for him, and there's no way base is going to give himself up.
There's effectively only 1 minute left because he has 2 Ghost Walks to play with in that time at least. So it just dwindles your time down. He's guessed right every time so far. He has been chasing, but he needs to get him first.
As you can see now, base playing that runaway game.
Oh, it doesn't double back this time. He's trying to chase through, but Ace picks up the Mega. We'll play the teleporter game. Pretty standard blood run tactics right now. He hasn't got a rocket, though. That is a problem.
He has to go in. Oh, and the teleporter is going to make it so much harder. Really no way he can instantly pull that turnaround. And he's trying to chase. Looking real difficult here. And I mean, the missed rails don't help. I know they are tricky shots to land while you're in the middle of moving, and you have to push in, you have to make something happen, but as long as he's taking this return damage that base can easily turn around, I mean, he just has to set up angles at that point. He knows that Tox has to chase, and Tox has to force himself to be predictable, because otherwise he's not going to be able to chase it. And at that point, too little, too late. Base spent, the best part of 7 minutes doing all the hard work, setting himself up where he can be like he's continuing it, getting another frag for good measure. And base playing a excellent game of Blood Runner. Not just that, but completely shutting down the Scale Bearer at the same time. That was just a bit of a masterclass, I think.
Yeah, there's no other word for it. He completely outplayed Tox from start to finish in that map. He had more control in spite of being on the back foot. Tox spent way too much time and energy just chasing shadows and running into not dead ends, but Russian rockets. So Base manipulated that map. That's what it felt like to me. He had Tox on a leash, and Tox didn't really know what to do. And it didn't feel that Tox was finding his groove just yet. It generally feels like Tox does take some time to get into series. So I would expect a slightly better performance on the second map, which is obviously Awoken and the Slash. This is where we're now going to see Tox come into the fore. His pick of map, his pick of champion. Let's see if he can regain some of that lost momentum, because Base really stalled him on that first map.
I think Base has looked quite strong often on Awoken. Just actually really comfortable. And that's something where, although this is going to be Tox's opportunity, I definitely think it's something that Base is not going to really be too timid on. I know you'd mentioned that you're maybe concerned isn't the right word, but the Visor pick, where you feel like Visor doesn't quite bring as much on this map compared to maybe some of the other ones. And there's always the chance that, when you don't have this ability that is, I guess, combat focused, that a lightning fast champion like Slash can definitely overwhelm you, and that's something that Tox can do. But I mean, Base clearly looking really solid today, as expected. We talked about his consistency before. Straight into game 1, map 1, looking just as good. Highly unlikely that he's going to shy away from that form at any point today. You know what I mean? So I always think that Visor with someone like Base is always a match made in heaven.
Oh yeah, and it's not a weak pick by any means. I just feel it's not the strongest, and he looks very strong. Like mechanically, he was out aiming Tox in that map. Yes, once again there was a difference in size, but rail, rockets, lightning gun were all on point. We'll see how he deals with the Slash, because speed is probably the biggest facet for me in Quake Champions. If you can use that effectively, you can just absolutely take control of the map and your opponent. And obviously there is no one better at playing Slash than Tox, so expect a masterclass.
Looks like we're loading in now as we start things up here on Awoken. Tox currently 1 map down on Base, and it was a dominant map at the same time. That early piercing sight, I mean, gotta use it. You need all that information you can get. Looks like Tox is going to run round towards Mega. That's going to help Base get some timing at the very least. So, if anything, he's at least going to have a rough idea of when everything's going to spawn. Oh, already springing somewhat of a trap on Tox and getting some free damage. But now, as I'm checking out things from Base's POV, I mean, he is walking around the bottom. He was listening around for Tox all over the place, looking for that opportunity to slip away. I think we're going to see a lot of that from Base.
I really enjoy watching a players like Base, is because he uses information so effectively. You can see every time he gets to a corner, he listens to where his opponent is and repositions accordingly. The use of the piercing sight is obviously a major contributor to his information as well. So he's just a player that manages the map and combat situations so smartly. And that's why his aim looks so good. It's because every time he takes an engagement, it's because he wants to take that engagement. When you catch him off guard, that's what you need to be doing as Tox. Speed, as I said, is one way to be able to forge those opportunities.
Now, very important for Base to find these angles as often as possible. You hit that rail against someone as fast as Slash. Sometimes you can hit that rail and she comes flying towards you anyway. And that fight's happening whether you like it or not. But Base, he's being so patient here. I know we're checking out things from Tox's POV on stream, but Base, I mean, he's just sitting near the center of the map and he's just holding these angles.
You can see the respect from Tox. He knows that he'll be punished. Base has that positional advantage and Tox cannot afford to challenge for the Mega.
And on that note, Base is going to pick it up just now. Heavy about to spawn. Looks like we should have somewhat of a trade-off. Tox is actually looking to maybe try and get some of that free damage, but he's taking some rails of his own. Pushing in for a fight, and he's able to tag it. Tox goes down, 1-0 for Base. But Base near Banana. Plenty of opportunities to get some stack back at the very least. And some hourglasses too. Not a bad victory.
Overconfidence from Tox there, trusting his aim a little bit too much. Base is no slouch and getting quite an easy frag in the grand scheme of things and taking a 2-0 lead now. Good timing on both items, a split as well. Use of the piercing sight to defend his heavy. Tox doesn't have the weaponry to compete. What's he doing pushing in? If he doesn't get the heavy, at least that's dangerous, but he does, which is the only benefit to that, because now he can pressure off the spawn. I mean, he's got opponent relatively low, just needs to get the right weapons and get in position to challenge for this Mega.
Tox does have access to the rail gun at the very least. We've got rocket and rail, but at this point, might not be enough to really fight. Oh, the rail doesn't quite hit its mark there. Tox that light armor alone might make it quite easy for Tox to sit here and control this heavy. Base is going to be less likely to challenge at this point. Tox using it as a chance to push out. There's a nice delay in between the two items, so we'll see if he can get that cycle going. Eats a rail on the way around, and relatively even stack at this point. Not too far different. He's going to push in. He's going to go all in here. He has to make sure he hits his mark. Misses the rail. Thankfully, there's a teleporter nearby.
So smart from base, the positioning up on the ledge. Tox using the rockets mean he just can't hit his opponent because the splash isn't going to hit you up on the ledge. Oh, good rockets from base, knocking him onto the low ground. Tox has to be careful here, but knows that base is relatively low, probably won't contest. Good rail coming out from Tox. Can he hit a second? Yes, he can. 3-1.
Tox isn't going to be too worried about taking that rail, knowing he can survive it. We just need to hit the money shot, and he is able to do it. And as we now go towards right near heavy, big fights taking place. Tox, I mean, he's very tender, only 35 HP. Base uses that as the green light to go in and take the Mega before flying in with the SSG.
Well,
Okay.
this is the thing that people don't talk about with base is his mechanical skill. He's hitting 65% rail against a slash. Off the spawn there, Tox had a corner,
slash
right
too
decision,
as well.
and base hits 2 rails back to back against a slash charging in. So what is Tox meant to do when he's making the right decision for being out-aimed? Tox is now getting the kind of taste of his own medicine.
And as you can see here, Base once again in just a better position to just pepper out that damage. Tox super weak, and yes, I was about to say, watch out for an SSG with that health.
And this map is spiraling out of control for Tox. It's already 6-1. It doesn't feel like it's been that one-sided.
And it's kind of almost hard to believe that we're already bordering on the halfway mark. I mean, like, we're just about to hit the 5-minute warning, 7-1. Base has just been all over.
And there's just that last frag just makes no sense to me. Like, I don't understand why Tox is challenging, and this frag as well, why he's challenging and hard committing. That's the difference. Because Base has the advantage, and he wants to take these fights. He's kind of baiting Tox into these engagements. That's better, using the speeder slash.
But
nice whip of the weapon from Base, but that's more like it. But taking these one-on-one lightning gun fights when you're out of position with no stack, you're just giving away free frags to your opponent, and against a player like Base, you just don't want to be in a deficit.
I feel like we see so often how insanely, just like that, Base is one of the most efficient users of that SSG than with anyone in the world. Like, his comfort with that weapon in these, well, obviously, you know, correct situations, but not every player really uses the super shotgun the way Base does.
No.
Just really interesting to see. And I mean, it's got to be said, with history kind of repeating itself at this point, it really feels at this stage that Base is one of, like, if not like the best player in the world at just dealing with Tox. Like, this isn't the first time we've seen maps go this way when they go head to head in a competitive setting. Base just is not afraid of this, you know, you would say overwhelming style that Tox brings to the table, but often Base in these maps, he's the one that just sits there, digs his heels in, sets up shop, plays around Tox, hits those range shots, takes the fights, wins the fights, and then Tox is almost in like desperation mode. I wish I could say this is the first time this has happened, but it's not.
Tox is effectively playing into Base's hands right now by rushing at him without any real control. Base struggles when his opponent's able to take away the map from him. Like, he's never a player that I've felt gets overwhelmed or gets crushed. He has a way to adapt, and his style lends himself to be resilient. But when Tox is pushing in, particularly against the Visor, I think he even heard the use of the piercing sight. Tox is always on the back foot at these engagements, and as I said earlier, Base only really takes a fight if he wants to take a fight, and so he's sticking around and baiting Tox into this and out-aiming Tox.
Even little things like that, hearing the jump pad and knowing that Tox is going to land at that exact position because he's going to look for a rail angle and he's ready to repay it in kind, like, crazy level of experience from Base.
His aim is remarkable. The way he positions...
Oh my lord! Rockets for days! I mean, ask and you shall receive, Zetasex. You just mentioned his crazy good aim, and he hits rockets like that.
He's got 8 impressives, Tox has 3, and Tox is obviously known as the rail master, the lightning gun master. Base is out aiming him in all aspects of this game. 16-3 isn't flattering either. It could be more.
Base gets a pretty decent opportunity for more damage. Another, I mean, come on. 17-3. And we still got a good 2 minutes left of this map. Base more than likely to break 20 at this point. Gets another frag on Tox, who just doesn't have the weaponry to fight back.
Well, yeah, I mean, this game is obviously well over and has been probably since about minute 5 when Base got that frag with the SSG when Tox was rushing in. If he had got that frag cleanly, he might have had a chance to get back into the game, but after that, it's
lord,
kind of hopeless for poor Tox as he needs to regroup. We were hoping that the slash pick would be his redemption. That arc ended very early into this game, unfortunately.
Base has already had a fair idea of where Tox is. The piercing sight has made a massive difference, but not only that, being able to actually punish those situations with good aim. Base has just done everything right. Tox has been playing into his hands pretty much since this map began. Base, he started off being so patient, right? He was careful, patient, slow-paced, showing tons of respect. And the moment he got that opportunity to really seize control of the map, it's been that way. It's been the Base show for 8 minutes.
I think the thing that I'm trying to also explain is that we haven't seen Base pick up the pace. He's just maintained discipline and positions and allowed Tox to rush him a little bit. We can see by the weapon uses of Tox that the way he wants to play this game. Tox has, by far and away, Lightning Gun is his most used weapon. He's barely used the rail whatsoever. When this was a map when Base was playing that slower game, it's to try and capitalize upon that.
Even more lined up, ready to go. 22 frags for Base. At this point, anything's going to be just bonus points. There's now 30 seconds of a victory lap for Base, and Tox just thinking, what do I have to do different in this final map? Because this whole series has just fallen away from him. At no point has Tox been in control. At no point has he looked comfortable.
No. And it feels like I've seen this story before as well, watching these two play. I remember another map on Awoken where I think Base took it well away from Tox. I can't remember exactly when it was, but it just does feel that Base, as you rightly say, has the answer, the remedy to Tox's poison.
Trying to push in a little bit, but
GG.
To no avail. I mean, yeah, what else can we even say about that one? GG. Base playing Base's game and Tox just really not having a footing in at all. At no point. 25-3. I mean, you don't often see Tox lose in that manner on a map.
Slash on Awoken isn't the best pick. It's not that Slash is a bad pick. It's just that Awoken doesn't lend itself to maximize what Slash has to offer. But yeah, the speed is always going to be a bonus and unlocks the potential of what Tox has to bring. But Base was just able to play around that and abuse that speed. In all honesty, he allowed Tox to try and abuse it and made sure he was in the right positions to decimate Slash whenever Tox made a push. And when you play that aggressive, non-stop style, matches can get away from you if you're not getting the frags. And that map definitely did get away from Tox.
And Base at an early point, it's Base by the end of the map versus Base at the very beginning when there was a lot more to play for, and it was that 0-0, that game of momentum, and Base knowing full well that if I concede too easy of a frag early on and Tox starts to get control, he can absolutely start to steamroll. The nature of those fast champions, and he's just so mechanically gifted at this point. It's not just the basic levels of things, but it is these champion matchups. We are starting to see more and more players play just a little bit differently depending on what champion they're going up against. And on the Blood Run, it was the game of corners and the ghost walk to counter the bull rush when necessary, and those swaggy little wall jumps that he was doing. And then on this map, it was again playing that crazy patient game and allowing Tox to almost like run himself into a bad position thanks to that movement.
Well, that's the thing, and it looked like an absolute steamroll, and Tox didn't care by the end because he had just been rushing for a good last 6-7 minutes. But there were a few really strange mistakes that were made by Tox in the opening where he hard committed for items or hard committed off the back of Base picking up an item that may have been frustration, it may have been tactical, and it just didn't work. But Base was positioned accordingly to take those fights, and I think that's credit to Base once again. He's just playing better than Tox.
Now we're going into our final map, which is going to be Ruins of Sarnath. Tox is rocking the Anarchy and Base rocking the BJ. And I mean, with how things have gone throughout this course of the series anyway, kind of hard to predict anything that's not a 3-0 at this point. Yeah, I really feel like even though, larger map, more room to move around. But even on things like those items, Base has been in a better position for it. He's been hitting more shots. Now he's got a dual wield. I mean, I can't expect anything that's not just the maps that we've had already, to be honest, especially when you just put the fact that it's Anarchy versus BJ and Base has the dual wield with the shots that he's already been hitting today. I mean, I just think he has the advantage going into this map as well at this point.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that. I mean, I said in the opening that I'm predicting a 2-1, but would not be surprised in the slightest if it was a 3-0 to Base. And I think, as you say, why would we be saying anything else at this point? Tox has shown nothing in terms of being able to take away a map from Base.
Base already opening things up, and that was after Mega gets taken, so not an amazing time for Tox to eat a rail like that. The injection is going to get popped, but even with the injection, it's not really enough. Oh, Base! We didn't catch it on the spectator, but Base had the cheekiest little angle there. Didn't quite hit it, but yeah, I like that. I'm going to assume you're looking at things from Base POV as well.
I was. I've swapped over to Tox now, but that was a cheeky little rail. Didn't work out.
But again, Base, patient, slow-paced, listening out. You know, he's in a good position to get the Mega anyway, so he's been able to take that one. But it's always a calculated start. Both players having to show respect.
Tox out of rockets, though. It has to be a priority for him to try and go back up and seize those.
The slow ascent
between
up the
major
steps.
items. It's risky to go down in here with rockets at your own disposal, but does some nice damage and gets out as well. So that's good play by Tox. Base, though, recognizing the situation, does rocket jump up. You can see him there trying to just bait Tox into the situation. But this time, Tox is slowing down the pace. Does need to get out of here. That is some nice damage from him, though.
Man, he's low on ammo in all capacity.
Yeah,
4
really
LG, 0 rockets. That's not the kind of situation you want to be in, though, when you've only got a rail, miss a rail, and you can't swap to anything. Thankfully, he's been able to get some LG. But while he's having to get some of these extra resources, it is allowing Base to kind of freely run around and take these items. Looks like he's going to get a tidy little rocket jump towards Mega and take that too. At least 10 seconds in between.
Tox is, though, just hiding out by that light armor. He's waiting for those audio cues, so he has the confidence then to move around the map. He hits a good rail, but he's a little bit stuck here. Oh, what a round from Base, though, in return.
Misses the shot. Tox looking to punish it a little bit if possible. Nice rail shot, and this could be an opportunity to lay some pressure on. Base has been able to disengage, but does he fight towards Mega? No, he's still going to do it. Oh, pushed off.
Oh.
Best case scenario for Tox right there.
Fortunate from Tox.
You can see Base having the confidence to push in. I mean, he had the dual wield. Tox wasn't particularly healthy near Mega. Just getting shoved away a little bit. Now, it has allowed Tox to push down a little bit.
Still doesn't have a rocket, though.
No, he hasn't had it for like 2 minutes. But once again, you know, we're hitting that 3-minute mark. No frags yet. The struggle for control and power.
I see.
The immediate use of the injection.
Still no rockets. This is dangerous to be down on the low ground without rockets, because if he gets trapped with Base, he's in a lot of trouble.
Base really trying to push Tox out there. He's going to be successful. He's picking up the heavy. Base already having the rail angle prepared. He knows that Tox is likely to run towards the light. He's making the perfect call 2 times in a row now where Tox is going to go. And Tox, pretty weak himself. He is slowly but surely building up the HP count, but he's still going to be worried about rails at this point. Base hitting quite a few of them. He's just getting really good predictions on Tox's movement too. And now Tox kind of stuck here for the time being. There's no armor nearby. He has been able to hear the heavy at least.
This is the problem as well. The Base is delayed. The Mega, so there's plenty of time for him to get around. And Tox needs to get out of there, not knowing exactly when the Mega was. And that rail opens up the opportunity for Base to push in here.
Oh, and he'll take it. He's going to take it 100%. Pushing in. Dual wield's going to get popped. No chance in hell that Tox was going to survive that.
Dual wield is just a perfect signifier of how Base plays the game. He didn't need it whatsoever, but uses it just to secure the kill and maintain as much of his stack as he possibly could for this next engagement. 2 frags back to back. 2 to -1.
This is the beginning of the end, potentially, for Tox. I'm a bit nervous about those past 2 frags that were conceded just kind of running in. I know we got caught with a tri-bolt on a bad teleporter on the second frag, so there's not much you can do about that one, but Tox now pushing in, really trying to say to base, I will not let you just control this map like you have the other 2 times. This is my mega.
Well, that's again another great example of the way base plays duel. He had all the weapons, had the stack, but just didn't want to take an engagement that was going to cost him too much of that advantage, so he could maintain position on the map and control. He manipulates the fights. He didn't want to take that fight, so he backed off and let Tox take the item.
But now, 3 frags separating the 2 players. We've hit that halfway point. Base still very much in charge of things. If an item goes, it's often because he's just comfortable letting it go at this point. However, that rocket jump... Really nice steal there. Going in, taking the heavy right before. But he has to be careful. Base hits 1 good shot he can push in. Looks like this should be the chance for Tox. Okay. Oof. A lot of damage was done by Base, though. So Tox definitely not out of the woods. And 30 seconds till injection. Uh-oh. Base in a better position for this mega. And the fact that he was better for stack, too. The fight begins. Looks like Base is able to take it. Even without any weapons, I mean, he's at least taken away one of them.
Selected shotgun as his starting weapon so he could go manage those choke points.
It looks like for the first time in almost the entire series, Tox able to be the player that's a bit more aggressive. Oh, no! Oh, he recovers. The recovery. Okay, that could have been disaster. That could have been a classic Tox disaster.
Yeah, you got to be careful. Even as an Anarchy in control, as you saw 1 full rocket and Tox lost so much of his stack.
Well, it's good that he recovered. He was able to pick up that rail. The sigh of relief, I'm sure, even if not physically, internally.
Yeah, but this is what Base needs to do, is play these choke points, because if Tox pushes through, he's always vulnerable. Good damage from Tox, he gets a kill to tie it up.
Now, this is good
nice
for Tox.
turnaround from the Swede.
Perfectly timed, too, because the Megas just spawned. Base is going to have a really good spawn, actually. Spawning right near LG, having his dual wield ready to rock. I mean, even fresh off spawn, Tox can't really challenge that one towards heavy. And it's given Base a footing back into this map instantly.
And this map has been such a good tempo from Tox, completely at odds with the way he played the first 2 matches, which was all out aggression. But needs, again, slight lack of discipline there, charging into Mega Room, wrong weapon out, not really considering where his opponent is. Those slight mistakes is what cost you series against the best players. But he's still in a good position, not counting him out.
And this is the kind of map win that will just be good for Tox. To be able to prevent not getting any points, and at the same time, someone that is, semi-close to you on the leaderboards from just completely pulling away from you as we're now reaching, remember, this is week 8. We only have a couple more of these shows, and then that's it, stage 4 finals. Tox can get a map now.
Isn't the biggest consideration in the world when you're right at the top of the leaderboard. Still helps with the overall rankings and seeding, as well as confidence and strategies going into the finals, you rightly say. Particularly as a momentum player like Tox, any extra emphasis you can get will be really beneficial, but Base is going to make him work for it if Tox wants his victory.
For even a single map, it really shows the dominance of Base. You want a single map on me, you've got to earn it. You've got to fight to the bone. But it's now 1.5 minutes. Both players pretty good on stack and weapons all round. Looks like Tox is trying to get that initial. Oh, okay. Who's gonna pull the trigger first? Both gonna do it at the same time. No teleporter from Base, and quite rightly so. He's not gonna take that risk. That's not a Base risk.
Pretty much even across the board in terms of items. Doing a little bit more damage. Nothing huge.
1 minute warning.
But Base just wants to take an engagement at choke point. He doesn't want to take an engagement out the open. He doesn't want to take on these rail duels, one-on-one lightning gun fights. He wants Tox to hard commit into a choke point, and this could be it.
He knows the dual wield is ready. That's why Tox is showing it the respect.
I see.
I do like that play from Tox. He knows there's a dual wield. He wants to make his presence known, but there's no way he's going to push too hard. He knows the jump pad's been used. A little bit of information base just going to immediately dip right back down. 100% likely at this rate we're going to go in for a sudden death unless this kind of fight can lead to something, but both players able to disengage, and they very much will do it. 20 seconds on the clock.
Does feel like Tox has learnt his lesson from Awoken, where he was taking those fights where he had no right to. It's one of those things where, you know, it may work so often in practice, picking slash, forcing fights against opponents that you're often beating, but against players that can withstand that pressure, it really comes back to bite you. So Tox has readjusted heavily on Ruins, slowed down the tempo, respected what Base wants to do, but he's going to have to forge something monumental to beat Base, because Base will have the dual wield, and he's only going to fight in these corridors, in these choke points, down where close combat situations reign supreme, and that's where Base is going to be strongest with his pick.
Oh, he's able to get a good rocket jump to open things. The fight towards Mega isn't going to lead to much as Tox is able to get in and out. Tox, you know, a couple of seconds ago looked a little bit unsure, had completely lost track of where Base was. But now he should have a clear idea. Listening out, he can hear him towards Heavy. Jumping down, big risk to make. Some opening damage is there. Base isn't going to chase it down to look for a rail, though. He wants to make sure he can secure. And as we are now in sudden death.
He's got time to get round to this Mega as well. He's done good damage to Tox, so realizes that Tox isn't as strong as he was before. Tox is guarding the choke point, though, and Base will not commit.
I mean, it's going to be a lot of boldness, I think, from either side to make a play happen in this sudden death. More likely to be Base, I think. At this rate, Tox, he's been so patient and careful up until this point. It's hard to think that he's going to do some kind of big, crazy push at this stage because, I mean, he hasn't played the map that way at all. He's been looking for information, but when he doesn't want to take a fight, he won't either. It's like you've said, he's a lot more disciplined in this map than he has been the past two.
We've also seen that Base has the capability to pick up the tempo as and when he sees an opportunity arise. All it took was one rail prior to the original heavy armor, and he was able to rocket jump up and nearly finish the game. Again, preemptively popping that dual wield just to make sure that Tox isn't going to try any shenanigans by jumping in again. But Tox, knowing that the dual wield is now not up, does feel the time is right and forces Base off that item. And now Tox has a good level of control, but he thinks that Base took it.
Definitely, 100% thinks the heavy's been taken. Even why he backed up to try and take that light. But there's still a heavy to be taken. No. There's still a heavy to be taken. No! God. Oh dear. Oh dear. Oh dear. That is
10,
a heartbreaker.
12 minutes of discipline and 3 back-to-back rails is all it takes.
Oh, off the back of taking the light because he must have assumed that the heavy was gone. Surely he must have. Oh.
Yeah, that small mistake. And Tox played so well up to that point as well. He's got himself back into the game after being 2 -1, maybe it's 3 -1 down, and all that hard work undone because he missed that heavy, and Base comes to the fore with 3 amazing rails.
Do you remember do you remember at the start of the series where I mentioned that as a Tox fan there are extreme highs and extreme lows? Definitely think that kind of finish is definitely one of the latter. Real heartbreaker for Tox. I mean, he played so much better in that map than he did the 2 previously, and in that sudden death, something as simple as that really just falling apart. It's devastating for Tox.
It's just another example of mid-lapses of concentration, lack of discipline, that, as we talked about at the very start of the show, that missing element of Tox that it takes to be championship material. Yes, you don't expect your opponent to hit 3 rails back-to-back, but taking that first rail in that room, leaving yourself exposed, just get out. Tox continued to progress, took another rail, and then tried to back out after that, and then got hit with the 3rd and final rail. So it was just, a slight lack of discipline, and instantly Base capitalizes. So all credit to Base. I thought he was incredible today. I don't feel that Tox showed us his best performance by any shape of the imagination. That final game is what we were talking about as well, where when he does have that level of discipline and mixes up the tempo and plays a more calculated game, he's far more formidable than when he just goes brute force mode. But Base is Base, and he matched it perfectly.
I think the two players gave us a kind of a perfect example of why their matchup is becoming, in my opinion, such a classic one, where it is that that real, we said it at the start, the clash of styles, where Base, he's just not really phased by that kind of aggression. And he proved that 1000% with just how smart he played, not only in the maps themselves, but the champion matchups were really impressive. And unfortunately for Tox, continuing to show us that air of inconsistency, I suppose. He's still fine on the leaderboards, but that's definitely a loss that will be unfortunate for him. But great for Base, because Base now gets that solid 3-0, and he gets a nice chunk of points for himself. Anyway, that was our first series of the day. We're moving on to our next one, which is going to be Cygib versus Dahang. We're going to go for a quick break. Be right back. Stage 4, week 8. Be right back.